his face was so strong as he was looking at me and saying, I see it. And I said, what do you see? He said, I see revival coming to planet Earth. He says, I see revival coming to planet Earth. Maybe as never before. As never before. I see revival coming. He says, it would be untold numbers and untold, uncounted multitudes that will be saved. That no man will say, so many, because nobody will be able to count those that will come to Jesus. And I just stood there, and he was prophesying and seeing a vision, because he said, I see it. I see it. He said, the dead will be raised. He said, the arthritic will be healed. He said, cancer will be healed. And he began to tell me of the mighty things that no disease would be able to stand before God's people, and that it would be a worldwide situation, not local, but it would be a worldwide thrust of God's power and thrust of God's anointing upon mankind. And I was listening so intently to it. And then he opened his eyes and looked at me, and he said, I will not see it, but you shall see it.
I hope you enjoyed hearing the last time that Lester Sumrall was with Smith Wigglesworth. A divine relationship ended with a divine deposit into a young man's spirit. There's something beautiful about a young man, a young woman who wants to learn, and an older man, an older one who has finished their life and they're in the giving years of their life. You put the ones who want to learn with the ones who want to give together, and you have a beautiful and glorious relationship by which things can be passed from one generation to the other, especially things of the Spirit of God. We need to make sure that we don't miss our divine appointments because of age difference or even distance. It's so many times we say, well, I wish I lived closer. I wish I could spend more time. Do not live in those words of, I wish I did, or I wish I could have. No, go ahead and do it now, so there's no regret about what you will have in your life. And you have a missing deposit because you allowed a TV show, you allowed weather, you allow other people to tell you, I wouldn't do that. Well, you're not them, you're you. Do what's right for you, and let these other idiots go away and quit controlling your destiny and how God wants to put you together. He received a deposit of faith. I asked you one time, why didn't you get it all? He said, well, when somebody's giving you a gift, you just receive, you don't argue, and you don't make statements of what you want. He goes, I would take anything he wanted to give me, and I got what he thought was best for me to have, and it lives inside of me now. So I'm so glad that I was around Lester Sumrall, the man that carried a deposit of the faith of the great man called Smith Wigglesworth. Now, before we go any further, I want to take just a moment and introduce the next section to you. Lester Sumrall is known in my generation, and probably by you that are watching, as a man that we could trust in the ministry of deliverance, of casting out devils. Now, that's not the only thing that he did. He taught so many beautiful things, and I hope that you'll get his DVDs and his CDs so he can teach you the wisdom of his years into your own spirit. But I wanted to take a moment, and I wanted him to share with you how he learned to cast out devils. It's a part of this time of his life when he's traveling with Howard Carter around the world that demonic manifestations begin to show up, and he doesn't know what to do, and he learns how to cast out devils, and that knowledge comes to all of us, and here's how it started.
In the Great Commission, Jesus said, they that have faith shall cast out devils. Say faith. It does not say preachers. It does not say missionaries, deacons or elders. It says they that have faith shall cast out devils. Now, I was born and raised in Pentecost. My mother spoke in tongues before I was born. We heard so much tongues in my house, and I was a boy, I didn't know which to use on the street, you know. They used them all the time. You know, in those days, they were fanatics anyway. Blessed ones. In all my life, in the Pentecostal movement, I never heard a sermon in my life on how to cast out devils. Not one in all my life. If you were sick, we'd pray for you. It always ended up with say, if the Lord wills. That was a escape hatch. If nothing happened, the preacher said, well, the Lord didn't will. You see? So he could get off real easy. But if you lost your mind, it put you in the crazy house. Didn't bother about that. We put a few in the crazy house when I was growing up. You see? We didn't cast the devil out of insanity. I began to preach 3 years. Never preached one sermon on how to set people free from demon power. You say, why? I didn't know anything about it. And I went off to New Zealand and Australia and came around to Java. Brother Howard Carter and I were traveling together by that time. We were the only two people traveling before the war that we knew anything about. And so he'd preached to one group and I'd preached to another. And there in Surabaya, and a great big church. It was an enormous thing. They already had a big church in Surabaya. On a high platform with all the dignitaries up there. A little girl slipped off the front pew and began to undulate like a snake on the floor. Green mess come out of her mouth. 8, 10 inches like this. Eyes like tiger eyes. It's frightening. I looked at the pastor and he counted the lights. He wouldn't look. I'd never seen anything like it. And I tell you what evangelists do. When they get in a corner and don't know what to do, they start saying, oh, Lord, save souls, oh, Lord, save souls. They don't really mean it. Oh, Lord, save souls, oh, Lord. That's the way they get out of their problem. So I did my regular routine when I saw this devil thing going back and forth across there, mocking the platform, spitting out that green mess. I'd never seen anything like it, never dreamed about it. All I could say is, Lord, say so. And God spoke back and says, I can't. I said, well, why can't you? He says, that demon is between you and the people. I said, well, move it. He says, move it yourself. And I said, I don't know anything about it. Well, he says, you can't do anything tonight. That demon won. I said, they're not going to win. He said, it looks like it to me. I was glad for that long song service, about 50 or 60 minutes. It gave me time to argue with God. What to do about a girl going up and down like a snake, clear across that big auditorium, back and forth, wild eyes and green mess coming out of her mouth. I didn't know what to do. So I finally was called on to preach, and I preached on this side. My interpreter was over here, and I stood up, and I was regular to do like evangelists usually do. Your flowers are so pretty. Your homes are so lovely. Your climate is so wonderful. I'm so delighted to see you. You know, it's a lot of baloney, but they feel like they have to start that way, being an evangelist. And I didn't get my regular, of telling them how nice they were. When my hand hit this, I screamed. It didn't come out of my head. It came out of my belly. My belly. I said, get up off that. And I scared myself. And the interpreter got scared and said nothing. But the devil understood English. She wiped that mess off her face. She backed up and sat in the pew like a zombie. She sat there and stared at me while I preached for 45 minutes. I thought it's all over. Yeah, see, I was very ignorant. Never heard any sermons on it. Never read a book on it. There were no books in those days about it. And I got ready to give my altar call because I'm an evangelist. And as I did, rather than giving my altar call, I said, come out of here! I said, oh, God, whatever happened to me? You know? You say, what happened? She was healed like that. That's right. Yeah, I was 20 feet away, healed. Her eyes became straight. Her distorted face became smooth, and she became a beautiful little 12-year-old girl. She laughed, and she turned to her neighbor and began to talk. And I grabbed my interpreter. I said, what's she saying? What's she saying? And he turned and said, she is saying, where am I? And what am I doing here? And while I was listening to that, I looked up, and 500 sinners had rushed to the altar to get saved without my asking them to. You say, were you happy about that? I was angry. I went back to the room and I met Brother Howard Carter there. And I said, I'm so mad I don't know what to do. He said, what you so angry about? I said, you should have heard me scream. I don't know how it ever got out. And I scared the people. I screamed so loud. I want to be a nice evangelist, American evangelist. I don't want to be a screamer. He said, what happened? And I told him. I said, it's awful. He says, I think that little girl must have belonged to the pastor. Full of the devil. Well, he says, that don't matter. He says, it sounds all right to me. I said, that's because you weren't there. If you would have been there, it was nasty. And I don't like it. I said, I hope it never happens again. Now, that's how ignorant I was of delivering people from that. I'd never heard of, never seen it. She was the first person I'd ever seen that was possessed of the devil. And I built up enough theology there to write a book. You don't have to touch them. You don't have to massage them. You don't have to ask them stupid questions. You just say, come on!
Lester Sumrall has now been told by the British government to return to the United States because the British government did not want any foreigners in the nation during the attack of the Germans on its citizens. They had enough to deal with, so all foreigners had to go home. So Lester Sumrall takes the boat and leaves the beautiful nation of Great Britain and heads back to his home country of America. And then he decides to do missionary trips, and so he keeps on going in South American places. At this time in his life, he falls in love with a wonderful lady named Louise. On September 30th, 1944, at 2:30 in the afternoon, Lester Sumrall marries the love of his life, and may I add this, and they stayed together for their entire life, working for God, loving each other, and they would have 3 children, 3 boys. Frank, that was born in 1946, their second son, Stephen, born in 1950, and Peter, their third and last son, in 1953. He had 3 boys. So can you imagine the Sumrall household? Brother Sumrall, Louise, his wife, and 3 little boys running around the house. That is Lester Sumrall when he receives the most interesting command from God. He's now in South Bend, has a great church. It's growing. 400 or 500 people in those days. That was a mega church for Pentecostal people. And God says to him, go to Manila, Philippines. You know, it's interesting. You get something going and it gets going really good, and finally all the hard labor is over and the harvest is coming, and God says, leave. Could you have the ability to leave something at the height of it? The Apostle Paul did that in Ephesus. He worked for 3 years to get a revival in Ephesus, and then on the day that it broke through and the revival hit, he left when the uproar was over. He left town. Maybe that's a mark of a true apostle, a true leader of God, that will be able to labor long, and when the labor finally comes to full manifestation of victory, thank God we got it, leave town and leave the victory, and the next set to the folks that are there. Sumrall has built a great church in South Bend, Indiana, and God taps him on the shoulder and says, I need you to go to Manila, Philippines. Manila, Philippines. Lord, I got a good church here, and they love me, and I like them. But if you want me to go, I'll go to the Philippines. So think about this. He goes in and tells his wife, who has 3 boys, we're moving from America and this great church and all your friends and all the security that comes here. We're moving to Manila, Philippines, where the Philippines had never had a revival in its history. It was pagan, then the Catholics came, and then the Catholics there mixed paganism and Catholicism together, and that's really what controlled the Philippines, religiously speaking. So Brother Sumrall told his wife Louise, we're going to the Philippines, pack up. And guess what? She did. She packed the bags, packed the kids, packed it up, and got on a boat, and it took them 22 days at sea to go from the west coast of America all the way into the beautiful harbor that was there in the Manila, the capital city of the nation of the Philippines. And it was not the best time. Philippines even today has some beautiful areas, but then you can see just next door the terrible poverty and the homelessness that is in that nation. So he was back there in the 1950s, so it's probably worse even back then. While he was in the Philippines, something marvelous happens. It would set the nation of the Philippines on fire, and the revival fire that began after this great miracle I'm about to tell you is still raging through the islands of the Philippines today. He was preparing a sermon one afternoon and had the radio on, and the radio announcer had been asked by the mayor of Manila to make a request and to air a sound recording of a young girl in Bilibid prison in the Philippines, outside of Manila there. There was something biting her all over her body, almost simultaneously, on her legs, her back, her stomach, her arms, her neck, her face, all over, would start biting her, and she would scream at the top of her lungs. They recorded it, and the mayor of the city had asked them to say, is there anybody in Manila that can help us deal with this? Because it was getting out of control. A young girl named Carlita had been picked up as a streetwalker in the nighttime of the Philippines and was taken to prison. And while she was in a prison cell, she said, through a little window in her cell that faced outside came a dark, misty cloud through. It came through the window and came on her. And when it came on her, it would begin to bite her. And they could see teeth marks. The bites would draw blood. There'd be saliva. And you could see them all over. They would just like supernaturally appear, as the doctors would say. And when the doctors came to look at her, that spirit that was on her and got into her rose up and cursed the doctor. And he died a few days later. So that scared the warden, scared the people, so they called for the Catholic priest. The Catholic priest came with this holy water, his crosses, his crucifix, and all his books, and she rose up and cursed him, and the Catholic priest died a few days later. And so now everybody's getting scared. The doctor's dead, the priest is dead, and the girl is taking charge in the prison, and people are scared, and then the mayor is nervous, and the newspapers are reporting about the happenings at Bilibid prison, and they put it on the radio to say, is there anybody out there that can help us? Sumrall was at his desk with the radio on, working on his sermon, trying to build God a big church and a great church in the Manila, and it wasn't quite working. And God said to Lester Sumrall, go take care of that. He goes, no, I'm not going to take care of that. Let somebody else do that. I'm here trying to build you a church. Let somebody else take care of that. Now, you got to know Brother Sumrall's personality. He's not being rude. He's just being Brother Sumrall. Lester Sumrall is gruff, not rough. To me, it's a little bit of a different thing. He's a little direct and gruff in his nature. And if you know Brother Sumrall, you can see him go, now, Lord, you caused me to leave South Bend. I had built you a great church there. And my family was happy. I was happy. We were good, and we didn't have any struggle. And we were building you a great witness there in Indiana. And then you told me to come here, and I can't even get, a couple hundred people in the building. And I'm working on my sermon, and now you want me to take care of some screaming demon on the radio. The Lord said to him again a few minutes later, go take care of that. He says, Lord, I already told you. Let somebody else do it. And the Lord comes back a third time. And he says, Brother Sumrall, go take care of that spirit down there. He says, Lord, why? He goes, because I have nobody else that knows how to do this. You are the man to do this. Sometimes you are the only person God has at that place in that moment to do his work. And to not be willing or to pass it to somebody else or wait till mañana, another day, will cause great trouble, could hinder the plan of God and set it back. We want things to stay on time. We want things in heaven and earth. We, God's people, are the connectors of the timetables of keeping things moving. We must move in earth in accordance with the dictates of heaven and the movement of heaven, and not letting culture and personality and personal lows and ebbs of energy control you. You must run by the Spirit and not by the natural. He said, Lord, I'm so sorry. I thought there'd be somebody else that you could use. I didn't know. I didn't know. And he said he was sorry and repented. The next day, he got his suit on, 1950s. Everybody wears suits and ties. Thank God ties are gone now. But 1950s, all the preachers that we're going to be looking at, they all wore ties and went to church. And they went to tents and sweat to death with ties on. So Sumrall put on his 1950 suit with his little tie and went down to the mayor's office, because that's where the radio announcer told him to go. And he told the person in charge there that I've come to see the mayor. I think I could help him with the problem at the prison. And so he waited until the evening, late afternoon, probably the last appointment the mayor would see that day. And he walks in, and the mayor greets him, and he greets him and says, I'm Lester Sumrall. He says, then you're an American. He goes, yes, I'm an American pastor. I've come here to got a great church in your city and to bless your people. And I heard on the radio that you have a problem in your jail here, your prison, and you need help. I think I can help you. He said, now, Reverend, he said, I've already had 2 people die, the mayor said. I've had the doctor die. I've had the Catholic priest die. He goes, but I can't have an American die. See, that was back in the day when America meant something. If you mess with an American, the whole nation of America would use their power to get you free. And so people were scared to mess with Americans. May that come back real soon so that we'll have that kind of strength and presence in the world again. But he said, now, I cannot have an American die in the Philippines. It will not be good for me in any fashion or form. And if you know Brother Sumrall, he would say, I don't die easy, sir. How do you die? Are you easy to knock out? Are you easy to knock over? Easy to slow down? What kind of person are you? Brother Sumrall was a force of just command by his own sheer will to obey God. When you obey God, it's done by the power of your will and the conviction of your spirit. You cannot obey God by the whim of public opinion, or you'll be easily swayed and you'll never fulfill that what you're called to do. And so he talked with the mayor, and the mayor said, okay, go down to the prison. They took him to the prison. And when Sumrall walked in, a little young Filipino girl named Carlita reared up with an angry voice and began to curse him. Oh, a little girl that's 17 years old, 16 years old, don't talk like that. Don't use language like that, especially 1950. That was a devil. A demon power was in her. Sumrall reaches over and grabs her and begins to break the power of the devil. He didn't ask the name of the devil. He didn't massage it. He cast it out. I command you to come out of her in Jesus' name. He would do that for a little while and rest a little bit and then go back and sing some songs and keep pounding that thing. And then toward the end of the day, he wasn't getting total victory. So he said to the Lord, what's wrong here? And he said, the Lord said to him, this one comes out by prayer and fasting. So he knew what he had to do. He closes up his time there in the cell with Carlita and goes to the warden there and says, now, I'm going to be gone for 3 days. I'll come back on the 4th day in the morning. Went home. And on his way home, he found a friend that he knew, a Filipino friend, that fasted with him for 3 days and 3 nights to have the power to break the spirit that was abusing this beautiful girl named Carlita and scaring the whole capital city of Manila. When he'd finished fasting, well, let me go here. What kind of friends do you have? Do you have friends that'll fast with you? Friends that'll pray with you? Or friends that just eat and play golf with you? What kind of friends do you have? You can't be a general if you just have golfing buddies and shopping sisters. If you're going to be a man or a woman of God that helps rule the heavens and bless the earth and do big things for God, you got to have a different kind of friend. He had a friend that would pray with him for 3 days and 3 nights. I want to give his friend a salute. I want to give his friend that he had the disposition and the will to come alongside with the prayer of agreement and fasting together as a powerful force to have a victory that day. On the morning of the 4th day, he returns. He goes in, he goes, I had new strength. I had new power. I had authority that I did not have before. And she reared up again, that spirit inside of her, and began to curse me and say vile things and curse God. He said, I rebuked it. And all of a sudden, that thing came out of her, and she fell on the floor, and they thought she died. A lot of times you've ever seen people get delivered from an evil spirit. When a spirit comes out of somebody, they look like they're dead sometimes because the force that controlled them has left, and they've got to reactivate their insides and come to the consciousness that they're in charge now and not that evil spirit. It takes a moment sometimes for people to wake up to the idea and to the understanding they're free now. They have their own power of their will back. They can do what they think is right, and they can be who they are, and there's nothing in them dictating or agitating or dominating them. He walked down and woke her up and got her saved and spirit-filled, and he was on the floor with her on his knees. They began to sing, oh, the blood of Jesus. He turned around, and the whole press, because by this time there were hundreds of press people in the prison, in the cell, and they were all on their knees too, singing and crying. For the first time, men and women saw that God was greater than the devil, and they saw a battle that God won before their eyes. The warden was on the phone with the mayor. Is he dead? Is the preacher still alive? What's happening? And the guy said, Mayor, the devil is dead. And Brother Sumrall said, well, you know, he had the point, but not quite right theology. The devil lost this battle. He wasn't quite dead, but he lost this battle. And the mayor said, bring the preacher to me. And by a police escort from the prison back to the mayor's office. This time, the mayor was waiting at the door for the preacher named Lester Sumrall to come through. He walked up to him and hugged him and thanked him and was so happy that the evil power had been broken and Carlita was free, and the evil presence that was controlling and manipulating the city through fear had been broken. And the mayor said to him, what can I do for you? Brother Sumrall said, well, I do have a couple of things I'd like. Number one, you see this big square where you have your political rallies and your big concerts where it comes with hundreds of thousands of people? I want that square for 6 weeks in the morning and in the night free, so I could tell all of Manila and all of the Philippines how Jesus healed and delivered Carlita and that he will do it for them. He said, Mayor, said, done, you can have it. He said, I have one more other thing I want you to do. I want you to have all the radio stations and the newspapers tell them about my meeting and invite everybody to come. Done, deal. So the order went out. At the end of 6 weeks, the nation of the Philippines had heard twice a day how the God of heaven set a girl free from demon power, and over 150,000 Filipinos were born again in 6 weeks. Now that is outstanding, but here's what is also outstanding. From that deliverance came a national revival. For the first time in Filipino history, Protestant Christianity took off like an explosion. And now Sumrall's church became the largest Protestant church in the Philippines. The Methodist grew. Every church that was struggling when this thing broke began to grow. A revival took off and is still going in some degrees today in the great nation of the Philippines.